The war was over, and the dragon's blood had spilled like rain. King's Landing had fallen. The mad King Aerys was dead, slain by Jaime Lannister, the Kingsguard who broke his oath. Tywin Lannister had sacked the city, claiming to fight for Robert Baratheon. But what he brought was fire and blood, Targaryen blood. It was the day after the massacre when Ned Stark rode into the Red Keep. The bodies of Rhaegar's wife, Elia Martell, and her children, Rhaenys and Aegon, had been found butchered. The smell of ash and rot filled the halls. Ned's heart was heavy with rage, not against the dead king or the Targaryens, but against the betrayal of honor. He had always known Robert Baratheon to be fierce, but seeing his old friend smile at the news of dead children made Ned sick. That night, he stood alone in the tower chambers once held by the royal family. The screams of the dying still echoed in his mind. There had been no trial, no mercy, no honor, only vengeance dressed in a crown. But then something unexpected happened. Varys, the whisperer of secrets, appeared in the shadows. "There is one child left," he whispered. "A girl, Daenerys, fled with her brother Viserys across the narrow sea. But there is another, my lord. A baby boy, Aegon, not Elias, Rhaegar's true-born son, hidden away before the sack." Ned froze. "Another Aegon?" Varys nodded. "The child lives. The mother died giving birth. He is hidden in Dorne, but he will not survive long. Not unless someone of great honor protects him." Ned should have walked away. He should have followed Robert's orders. But something deeper stirred inside him. Lyanna, his sister, who died alone in a bloody bed, whispering, "Promise me, Ned." He had broken one promise that day by staying silent about Jon Snow's true name. He would not break another. Ned rode south, leaving Ser Barristan and others behind, claiming urgent business. Only Howland Reed rode with him, as he had during the war. Together they reached the coast of Dorne, where a wet nurse named Mare waited in hiding, holding a baby boy with silver hair and violet eyes. "This is Aegon Targaryen," she said, "son of Rhaegar and Elia, or—" "Not Elia," Ned said quietly, "but he is the son of a prince. That is all that matters." He took the child in his arms and stared at him. The boy's small fingers wrapped around his thumb. In that moment, something shifted inside Eddard Stark. This wasn't a Targaryen. This wasn't a threat to Robert's rule. This was an innocent boy, a child who hadn't killed anyone, a child who deserved life. Ned returned to the north months later. The war was over, and Robert had taken the throne. The kingdom was broken, but peace had been declared. Ned brought back not one but two children, Jon Snow, whom he claimed as his own bastard, and another boy named Arlen Stone, the so-called son of a dying bannerman from the Vale. Only Catelyn noticed something odd. The child had pale silver-blonde hair and eyes like polished amethysts. "Whose child is that, truly?" she asked. Ned only said, "He is under my protection." She never asked again, but the coldness between them only grew. In the halls of Winterfell, the secret burned quietly. Two boys, raised as brothers, Jon and Arlen, grew up together, neither knowing the truth of their blood. One was the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, the other the son of Rhaegar and a secret wife from Essos and far across the sea. A young girl named Daenerys lived in exile, unaware that her brothers still breathed. But secrets do not stay buried long in Westeros. Whispers began to spread. A boy with Targaryen eyes in the north, a lord too honorable to let children die, a rebellion not yet finished, only sleeping, and in King's Landing Robert's dreams turned darker with every passing year. The ghost of Rhaegar haunted his throne, but worse than that was the thought that a Targaryen still lived, and that Ned Stark may have lied to him. Robert's rage was slow, but it was coming, and this time war would not wait for honor. The winds of the north howled louder that winter, but it was not the cold that kept Eddard Stark awake. It was the dreams of silver-haired children butchered in their cradles, of Robert laughing over cups of wine while blood ran down the Red Keep's walls. And always, always, the sound of Lyanna's voice, "Promise me, Ned, Years had passed since he brought Egan to Winterfell under the name Arlen Stone. The boy grew strong, quiet but clever, with eyes too bright to hide forever. He loved books, especially old tales of dragons and forgotten kings. He trained with the sword like Jon, though his form was more graceful, less brute. Ned had tried to raise them equally, but even he could see it. There was something in Arlen that felt like fire, and Robert was coming to Winterfell. Not for battle, but for friendship, for politics, for power. He was bringing his queen, Cersei Lannister, and the little princelings born of her cold womb. He was bringing the full weight of the crown into Ned's home, and Arlen was now 12, too old to be called just another ward, too proud to be mistaken for a bastard, and too dangerous if anyone looked too closely. Maester Luwin had already noticed. "His hair is almost silver, my lord." "The boy draws attention. People will talk. They already do," Ned said bitterly. "They just don't know the truth." And they must never. The royal procession arrived with thunder and gold. Robert, fatter and louder than ever, embraced Ned like a long-lost brother. But his eyes were tired. Something about him felt hollow. "It's cold as a grave here," Robert grunted, walking through the gates. "How you stand it, I'll never know. You used to love the North. I used to love simpler times. Fewer Lannisters." As the feast began that night, Ned watched the Queen's sharp gaze sweep the hall like a hawk. She saw everything: who smiled too much, who drank too little, who looked at her sons the wrong way. But when her eyes landed on Arlen, she blinked. Just once, then stared. "Who is that boy?" she asked. "Arlen," Ned said calmly. "The son of a fallen bannerman. I took him in during the war." Cersei tilted her head. "He looks Valyrian." Ned's face stayed still. "Many old houses from the Vale claim Targaryen blood. It means nothing, but Cersei was not easily fooled. That night, as the castle slept, Varys came in silence once again, this time stepping out of the shadows of Ned's own solar like a ghost. "You have done a dangerous thing." "Lord Stark," he whispered. "You knew," Ned said. "You've always known." Varys didn't deny it. "I know many things. I know that Queen Cersei has already asked her spies about the silver-haired boy. I know that if Robert finds out, he will kill the child without blinking. He still dreams of Rhaegar dying on the trident. He'll never stop hating the name Targaryen. And what do you want, Varys? Survival, stability, not fire and blood." The eunuch folded his hands. "The boy could unite Westeros someday, or destroy it. That depends on who raises him. I raised him as my own, as a Stark." Varys leaned forward. "Then pray the wolf is stronger than the dragon in him." Days later, Robert stood in the crypts of Winterfell, staring at Lyanna's statue with eyes full of regret. "She should have been my queen," he said. "Not that lioness I bed now." "She was never yours," Ned said quietly. Robert looked at him. What happened truly in that Tower of Joy? Ned felt the walls close in. "She died, Robert." "That's all." But Robert's eyes narrowed. "You never speak of it. Not even to me, because some things are too painful." Robert didn't argue, but something passed between them. Doubt, maybe suspicion, the kind that grew like rot. That evening, Ned found Arlen in the Godswood, staring into the black water of the Heart-Tree's pool. The boy turned to him and asked, "Lord Stark, am I really just a fallen bannerman's son?" Ned paused, then sat beside him. "You are brave, and kind and strong. What you are now matters more than what you were." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give, for now." Arlen said nothing, but his eyes burned with quiet hurt. That night, ravens flew from Winterfell, one to Stannis Baratheon, warning of secrets buried long ago, one to Dorne, where the Martells still whispered vengeance, and one, intercepted by Varys himself, meant for Cersei. It read, "The dragon lives." Hidden among wolves, the game had begun, and no one, not Robert, not Cersei, not even Ned, could stop what was coming. The boy had Targaryen blood. The North would not hold him forever, and the crown had long memories, and a thirst for dragon blood that had never gone away. The cold wind carried whispers through Winterfell's stone corridors, but none so dangerous as those creeping into the ears of Robert Baratheon. He was no longer the young warrior who shattered Rhaegar's breastplate on the trident. He was a tired, bitter king with aching bones and a haunted heart. And the more he drank, the more the past refused to stay buried. "Your ward," he said to Ned one morning, eyes bloodshot from drink. "That silver-haired boy. There's a rumor." Ned froze. Robert stared into his cup. "They say he has the eyes of old Valyria, that he doesn't look like any Northman, that he looks like a Targaryen." "He is not," Ned said firmly. Robert's gaze turned sharp. "You'd tell me, wouldn't you, if some dragon spawn lived under your roof?" "I would," Ned said, even though the words scraped his throat like broken glass. Robert said nothing more. But Ned saw it. The seed of doubt had taken root. And once planted in the king's mind, it never died. Later that day, Ned sent Arlen into the forest with Jon and Robb, under Sir Roderick's watchful eye. He needed the boy away from the eyes of the queen and the king, but Cersei had her own messengers, and her claws ran deep in the shadows. That evening a rider galloped into the courtyard, muddy and bleeding, nearly collapsing from the saddle. "He was one of Ned's scouts from the south, Lord Stark," he rasped. "The gold cloaks. They're moving. Orders from the Hand. No, from the Queen. They're searching for a Targaryen boy, not Daenerys, a young one. Here in the north." Ned's blood ran cold. "She knows." In the forest, Arlen rode ahead of the group, racing through the frost-bitten trees with wild joy. Jon chased behind, laughing. For a moment, they were just boys again, free from names, houses, and thrones. But that freedom shattered when arrows flew. Sir Roderick bellowed, "To me! Protect the boys!" Hooded men leapt from the trees, mercenaries, quick and brutal. Jon tackled Arlen off his horse, just as a blade sliced through the air where his head had been. Robb and Sir Roderick fought fiercely, cutting two down, but a third man grabbed Arlen, pressing a dagger to his throat. "Don't move!" he shouted. "One step and the little dragon dies." Jon moved anyway, fast. He slammed into the man with all his weight. The blade grazed Arlen's neck, drawing blood, but Jon didn't stop. He stabbed the man in the gut with a stolen dagger and held him down until he stopped breathing. Arlen stared at him, pale and shaken. "Why did he call me a dragon?" Jon looked just as lost, but Roderick wasn't. His face was grim. "We need to get back. Now." Back at Winterfell, Maester Luwin stitched Arlen's wound in silence. Ned watched from the shadows. The cut was shallow, but the truth had left a deeper scar. Arlen finally looked at him. "Tell me, my lord, who am I?" Ned sighed as if every breath hurt. "You are Aegon Targaryen," he said softly. "Son of Rhaegar, hidden to protect you from the same fate as your siblings." Arlen's face twisted with shock. "You lied to me. I saved you," Ned replied. "I chose to protect a child instead of obeying a king's hatred. I'm not your son." "No," Ned said, "but I raised you like one, and I would die to keep you safe." Arlen's hands trembled. "I don't want a throne. I don't want any of this." "I know," Ned said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "But sometimes the truth wants you, even when you don't want it." Meanwhile, in the king's chambers, Cersei whispered poison into Robert's ear. "You know what he's done. Your precious friend, the Warden of the North. He's sheltered a Targaryen, lied to you." "For years," Robert glared at her. "You have no proof." "I sent my men." "He had them killed." Robert clenched his fists. "He wouldn't betray me." "He already has," she said coldly. "And if you let him live, you'll lose your throne. Then your head. Then our children." He rose from the chair slowly, like a mountain coming to life. "If this is true, then Ned Stark has made me an oathbreaker and a fool." Cersei smiled like a cat in cream. "Then do what kings do, your grace. Burn the lies out of the north." At dawn, a raven flew from Winterfell. It carried Ned's words, sealed in Stark wax. "He knows. Prepare the boy. Send him away. South, then across the sea. Varys has men." He sent it to Howland Reed, the last man who knew the truth. That same morning, Ned gave Arlen a sword. "This will not end well," he said, "but you may yet live. That is all I can offer." Arlen held the blade in shaking hands. "I don't want to run. You'll do worse than run. You'll survive." And in the distance, beneath the red banners of the stag, a royal host began to move. Winterfell would soon be surrounded, and the blood of dragons would be hunted once more. The castle walls of Winterfell had never felt so thin. Snow fell in sheets, blurring the horizon, but even the thickest storm could not hide what approached. Banners of gold and black, a crowned stag on a field of blood. Robert's host had split in two, one still hunting in the Riverlands, the other smaller and faster, led by Sir Meryn Trant, closing in on the north. But it wasn't a war party. Not yet. They were coming for one boy, one secret, and one truth too dangerous for a crown to forgive. Ned stood atop the battlements, eyes narrowed against the wind. The weight of what he'd hidden now pressed on his chest like a stone. Inside the great hall, preparations had begun. Not for battle, but for flight. Arlan Targaryen, once Arlan Stone, now knew who he was. And he hated it. "I don't want to run," he told Jon again, pacing the godswood as snow gathered in his hair. "I want to fight. If I die, at least it'll be for something real." Jon stood firm. "You dying isn't real. It's stupid. I'm not afraid." "Then you're a fool," Jon snapped. "Or do you think being brave means standing in front of a sword? No, it means staying alive when everything says you shouldn't. It means doing the ugly thing. The hard thing." Arlan turned away, fists clenched. "He should have told me earlier. He was protecting you." Jon hesitated. "He protected me too." Arlan blinked. "What do you mean?" Jon looked up at the heart tree. "I'm not his bastard. I'm not a Stark by blood. Not fully. He lied to both of us, and I don't hate him for it." Silence fell between them, broken only by the rustle of branches. That night, Catelyn came to Ned in his solar. Her face was pale, lips drawn tight. "The Queen sent a letter. It arrived before the riders. She demands the boy, says he is royal property." "Property," Ned muttered. "A child. Nothing but a name to them. She says if we deny them, it will be seen as treason." Ned looked into her eyes. "Would you have me hand him over?" Catelyn didn't speak for a long moment. Then finally, with effort, "No, not after all this. Not after what they did to Elia's children." He reached out and took her hand. For the first time in years, they were truly united. Not just in marriage, but in purpose. At midnight, Maester Luwin led Arlan through Winterfell's crypts. The air was damp and thick with dust, each step echoing like a secret. Jon waited below, beside a wagon hitched with fresh horses. Howland Reed's riders were ready. The path was old, a forgotten tunnel from the days of the first men, stretching beneath the forest and surfacing miles south of the King's Road. Arlan looked back once, just once. "Tell Lord Stark thank you," he said to Luwin. "You'll tell him yourself." "Someday," the Maester said gently. Jon clasped Arlan's arm. "We'll meet again. I hope so." And then he was gone, swallowed by shadows and snow. At dawn, Sir Meryn Trant arrived at Winterfell's gates with 40 men, bearing a royal decree. His voice echoed through the courtyard. "By order of King Robert Baratheon, the boy calling himself Arlan Stone is hereby demanded in custody for questioning regarding false claims of royal blood. Failure to comply will be considered an act of rebellion." Ned met him in the courtyard, calm as ice. "You are welcome in my hall," he said coldly. "But the boy is gone." Meryn's lips curled. "Then you admit guilt?" "I admit nothing. He was a ward. Nothing more. You shelter traitors, Lord Stark, and you murder children in their beds," Ned said, voice cutting. "Tell your queen that Winterfell remembers." That night, Ned received another raven from Stannis Baratheon. Its message was brief. "The queen's bastards wear the crown. The true king is dead, and the wolf protects the dragon. We should speak." Ned burned the letter. Not out of fear, but out of timing. War was already coming. Far across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen stood on a dusty balcony, staring at the moon. Viserys muttered behind her, pacing, angry as always. But her thoughts were elsewhere, drawn inexplicably toward the west, toward a name she had never heard before, Aegon. And in the north, deep in the woods beyond the old tunnel, a silver-haired boy rode hard with a false name, a sword at his hip, and the blood of fire in his veins. He was meant to die in a cradle. Now he rode toward destiny, and all of Westeros would burn before the game was over. The road south was no place for boys, but Arlen Targaryen wasn't a boy anymore. Not after learning the truth, not after nearly dying for it, not after fleeing the only home he'd ever known. His companions were quiet, sharp-eyed riders sent by Howland Reed, sworn to Ned Stark by bonds deeper than loyalty. They spoke little, moved swiftly, and made no fires. The boy they guarded wasn't just a ward now. He was fire reborn in a land ruled by fear and lies, and every shadow whispered betrayal. Back in Winterfell, the cold had changed. It wasn't the bite of winter. It was tension, thick and choking, like snow that refused to melt. Robert hadn't returned with Sir Meryn. That was the only thing that kept Ned's head from a spike, but the Lannister lion did not forget, nor forgive, and word was spreading, in the taverns, among travelling merchants, even in the whispers of the Night's Watch. A silver-haired boy in the north, a dragon raised by wolves. It wasn't just a rumor anymore, it was prophecy. At court, the Queen's fury grew colder with each passing raven. "You lost him," she spat at Sir Meryn. "You let a child slip between your fingers like snow." Meryn didn't speak. He knew better. She turned her wrath toward Varys. "You always know things. Where is the boy?" Varys gave his slow, empty smile. "If I had every answer, Your Grace, I'd wear a crown myself." Cersei's eyes narrowed. "We have to end this before it begins, before the truth grows teeth." Varys nodded. "Then strike quickly, quietly, before the realm remembers dragons once ruled." In the Riverlands, far from thrones and gold, Howland Reed waited at a forgotten inn with a hood drawn over his face. When Arlen arrived, mud-splattered and exhausted, he bowed low, not to a prince but to a promise. "I served your father," Howland said. "I buried his name so you could live." Arlen stared. "Why? Why did any of you do this?" "Because your birth was not a mistake," Howland said gently. "It was the last hope of peace. Rhaegar believed in a better world. Your mother, Lyanna, she died begging Ned to keep you safe." "I don't feel like peace," Arlen muttered. "I feel like a curse." "That's because peace does not come easy to those born of fire." Howland handed him a small leather-wrapped bundle. Inside, a ring of blackened steel, forged in the shape of a three-headed dragon. "Your father's ring, a symbol, a weapon, if used well." Arlen took it with shaking fingers. For the first time, he felt the weight of who he was, not just in name but in legacy. He wasn't just running anymore. He was being prepared. In King's Landing, a fire was being lit under the throne. Robert's guilt was catching up with him, faster than wine could drown it. He had loved Lyanna, truly, foolishly. But the truth of her dying in a bloody bed, birthing a Targaryen heir, it broke something inside him. "Ned lied," he said softly to himself, staring into his goblet. "He lied for her, and for the boy." "Then punish him," Cersei urged. "Cut the wolf's head before it bites." But Robert only sighed. "I've spilled enough Targaryen blood, and he's still my brother, in heart, if not in name." Cersei's smile was bitter. "You are weak, Robert, and weakness is what kills kings." Meanwhile, ravens flew from Dorne. Prince Doran Martell, quiet and watchful, received the news like a man seeing the sun after years of rain. "Elia's son lives," he whispered. "Or so they say." His daughter Arianne leaned forward. "Is it true?" "If it is," Doran said, "then the time for silence is ending." He looked eastward, toward Dragonstone, toward the seas. "Let the fire rise." Arlen crossed the Blackwater River under cover of night, guided by loyalists who never forgot the dragon's name. In a cave near the Stormlands, they met a man cloaked in shadows. A smuggler, a knight, a man with no love for the crown. Davos Seaworth, I don't kneel to kings I don't know, Davos said, but I know injustice when I see it. He looked Arlen up and down. You're young, too young for war, but your name, it might be worth dying for. I don't want war, Arlen said. Davos nodded. Neither did your ancestors, but it found them all the same, and so the last heir of the dragon was smuggled east, across the sea, just as his aunt had been years before. But this time the child wasn't alone. This time he carried more than blood. He carried a spark, and Westeros, dry and bitter, was ready to burn. The sea was cruel, as it always had been to Targaryens. Storms chased the ship like angry ghosts. Waves slammed against the hull with fury. But through the rain and darkness, Arlen stood at the bow, refusing to be afraid. He was leaving behind the only land he'd ever known, the snows of Winterfell, the voice of Lord Stark, the laughter of Jon, all of it fading into memory as the coast of Westeros disappeared behind grey fog. Beside him stood Ser Davos, one hand gripping the rail, the other resting near the hilt of his dagger. "You ever sailed before, boy?" Davos asked. Arlen shook his head. "No." "Good," Davos muttered. "Then you won't know when to start panicking." Despite everything, Arlen gave the smallest smirk. When the ship reached Lys, they were greeted by silence and suspicion. Targaryen blood was still dangerous, even across the narrow sea. Gold meant more than names here, and secrets were sold like bread. But someone had been waiting. A woman, dressed in black and red robes, with silver-streaked hair and a voice like smoke. Melisandre. She looked at Arlen and smiled as if she'd been expecting him her entire life. "I saw you in the flames," she said, bowing her head. "The boy born beneath 2 dying stars, the dragon hidden among wolves." Davos stepped between them. He didn't come for riddles. Melisandre's red eyes never left Arlen. No, but he came for fire, and fire will answer. Arlen was taken to a compound hidden in the hills above Lys. It belonged to old Valyrian families, ones who remembered the days when dragons ruled the skies. Here no one questioned his hair, no one whispered his name like a curse. They bowed, and some knelt. He hated it. "I'm not a prince," he said to Davos that night. "Not really, just a boy who got lucky." "Lucky?" Davos chuckled. "You call being hunted by the crown lucky? I didn't earn this. I didn't fight for it." Davos sat down beside him. "Most kings don't. They just live long enough for the world to put a crown on their head. But I don't want a crown." "Then maybe you're the only one who deserves it. But not all in Essos welcomed a dragon reborn. In the slums of Myr, a hooded man received a letter sealed with golden wax. He broke it open with a jeweled dagger and read the message carefully. "A boy named Arlen, Targaryen blood, smuggled across the sea." He smiled, without warmth. Varys's whispers had reached him, and for a man like Jaqen H'ghar, such whispers always came with a price. Meanwhile, in Pentos, a quiet merchant lord was already hosting another Targaryen, Daenerys. She had heard the rumors, whispers of a silver-haired boy hidden in the north, raised by wolves, now sailing the same waters she once crossed in fear. She didn't believe it. Couldn't. "Another Targaryen?" she asked Ser Jorah. "Another heir?" "He'd be your nephew, your grace," Jorah said softly. "If the rumors are true." Her hands trembled slightly. "They can't be. Rhaegar's children were murdered. I saw the grief in Viserys's eyes. He spoke of it often." "Viserys was a liar," Jorah replied, "and a fool." Daenerys said nothing, just stared at the fire as if it might show her the truth. "What would you do if he lived?" Jorah asked. "I don't know," she whispered. "Love him or kill him." Days later, in the hills above Lys, Arlen stood before a burning pyre. Melisandre had gathered followers, men and women who believed in prophecy, in kings reborn, in dragons and fire. She called him Azor Ahai, the prince that was promised. He didn't believe her, until the night the fire flared blue, and something in the flames called his name. He saw shadows, a woman with silver hair walking through ashes, a direwolf howling beside a blood-stained throne, a sword burning in darkness. He woke screaming, and Melisandre stood at the foot of his bed, smiling like a mother who'd just watched her child take his first breath. "It has begun," she whispered. Back in Westeros, Cersei sat on the Iron Throne beside a silent Robert, reading a raven's message with eyes full of fire. "He's alive," she said. "They smuggled him out, across the sea." Robert said nothing. He was aging faster than the seasons now, crumbling under guilt and wine. Cersei rose. "Then we hunt him, and if we can't reach him, we'll kill the ones who helped." She turned to the guards. "Bring me Eddard Stark's head." And far, across the sea, Arlan stood at the edge of the Valyrian hills, wind in his hair, sword in his hand, and truth burning behind his eyes. He was no longer a hidden boy, he was a dragon, and soon the world would know it. The sun dipped low over the waters of Slaver's Bay as sails cut through the horizon, black and red, trimmed with silver. A dragon was arriving, but not the one they expected. In Meereen, Queen Daenerys Stormborn sat upon her marble throne, her face calm, but her blood restless. The city bowed to her, feared her, worshipped her, and yet, in her dreams, it was never Meereen she ruled, it was Westeros. And now, a boy with her blood had come across the sea, not begging for help, not swearing fealty, but claiming his place, her nephew, her rival Aegon. No, she corrected herself bitterly. Aslan. That was the name he grew up with, the name Lord Stark gave him. She hated that most of all, that Ned Stark, the man who stood silent as Elia Martell's children were murdered, had kept her brother's heir alive, raised him, loved him like a son, while her own childhood was one of exile, hunger, and whispered threats. "I should have been the one they saved," she said aloud. Ser Jorah stood nearby, silent. He had learned not to argue when her voice carried that edge. "You are queen, your grace," he said. "He is a boy raised in shadows. Let him remain there." Daenerys' eyes narrowed. "He carries Rhaegar's name, his face, his fire. The people will see it. And if they see him, they may forget me." The meeting was set atop the pyramid of Meereen. The Dragon Queen on one side, the Dragon Prince on the other, and between them, the ghosts of a dynasty. Arlan climbed the marble steps, with Melisandre behind him. His silver-blonde hair was tied back, his cloak stitched with a three-headed dragon. He looked older than his years, not just from the journey, but from the weight of expectation. When he saw her, Daenerys, he stopped. She was beautiful, fierce, regal, not a girl, not a myth, but something more, something dangerous. Daenerys stood, her eyes scanning him like a sword. "You have your father's eyes, and you have his fire," Arlan replied. The silence stretched between them. "You believe you're the heir," she said flatly. "You've come to take the throne I was born for." "I didn't ask for it," Arlan replied. "I never wanted a crown." "Then why come here?" "Because Westeros is falling apart. Because the North is being bled. Because I've seen the kind of monsters who rule now, and I can't look away anymore." Her voice dropped like a blade. "And you think you can fix it?" "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I know what my father died for. I won't let it be for nothing." That stung. She turned away, hiding the flash of pain behind her eyes. "You weren't there," she said more quietly. "When I was hunted, starving, married off to a warlord, abandoned by everyone. Don't speak to me of sacrifice. I was nearly killed just for existing," he said. "My head was nearly cut off in my own home. I didn't grow up in palaces either, Daenerys." She paused at the sound of her name, then after a long breath, "So what do you want from me, Arlan Targaryen?" "Not war," he said. "Not your crown, just a chance to fight beside you. Not behind you, not under you, beside you." It was the only thing she hadn't expected. That night, Daenerys stood alone beside her dragon, Drogon, whose eyes reflected the stars. She touched his scales and whispered, "What if he is the prince that was promised?" Drogon growled softly, but not all in Meereen were loyal. In the shadows of the city, men gathered in silence. Gold had changed hands, Knives had been sharpened, and the order had come from across the sea: kill the boy with the silver hair. Make it look like a message from the queen. They would strike before the dragons chose a side. At dawn, the assassins moved. 3 cloaked figures slipped into the guest chambers, blades drawn, but Arlen was already waiting. Jon Snow had taught him well. Steel flashed. One assassin fell before his foot crossed the threshold. The second ran, only to meet the red eyes of Melisandre in the hall. She whispered a prayer, and flame erupted from her palm. The last tried to grab Arlen, but Daenerys appeared at the door. Flanked by Unsullied, she said only one word: Dracarys. The man burned where he stood. Later, Arlen sat with his back against the stone wall. Chest heaving, Daenerys knelt beside him. For the first time she looked at him not as a threat, but as kin. They want us dead, he said. They always will. He met her eyes. So we fight them. Together! She nodded slowly. For now, the ravens flew faster than swords. By the time the first ship set sail from Meereen, Westeros was already boiling. In the north, Winterfell stood half empty. Robb Stark now ruled in his father's place, but the shadow of Ned's execution order, signed, sealed, and waiting for Robert's dying hand, hovered like a storm cloud. Only the king's sickness had delayed it. But Cersei's patience had run out. The crown had declared Ned Stark a traitor. The North would not forget. Across the Reach and the Riverlands, banners rose, some for the crown, some for justice, and some for a boy they'd never met, Arlen Targaryen, the dragon raised by wolves. He was no longer a rumor. He was real. He had returned, and he had come with fire. The fleet that arrived at Dragonstone was modest, but behind it rode something older than kings. 3 dragons, wings spread wide across the sky. When they landed upon the cliffs, the old stones of House Targaryen wept with memory. Daenerys dismounted first, regal and silent. Behind her came Arlan, armored in silver and black, sword at his side, cloak of stark grey clasped over one shoulder. They looked like conquerors. Because they were, but they didn't speak of conquest. They spoke of cleansing. That night, around the war table once built by Stannis, they studied Westeros like a battlefield. Sir Davos placed wooden tokens across the map. The North will rise if you show your face. The Riverlands hate the crown. Jon hasn't forgotten Alia. The Vale may wait and watch. And the Lannisters? Daenerys asked. They'll fight until there's nothing left to protect but ash, Arlen muttered. Then we give them ash, she said. No, Arlen said quickly. We give them choice. First. Daenerys looked at him, eyes sharp. You still want to save them. I want to rule better than they did. You think mercy makes you strong. I think restraint does, she didn't argue. But she didn't agree either. In King's Landing, the Iron Throne sat heavier than ever. Robert was dead, slumped in his chambers, body bloated, skin blackened. The wine had been poisoned, quietly, cleanly, officially a fever, unofficially. Cersei had taken the throne in all but name. Joffrey wore the crown. Cersei wore the power, and across the Blackwater, her nightmares took shape. 3 dragons, and 2 Targaryens with Stark loyalty in their bones. They come to burn us, she hissed. No, Littlefinger said with his usual smirk. They come to offer peace. That's why it's dangerous. She turned to him. They must die, both of them. Before the realm remembers, dragons are more than stories. Meanwhile, in the Godswood of Winterfell, Jon Snow read the Raven from Dragonstone with trembling hands. We march soon. The North must choose. Arlen, he looked up at Ghost, whose red eyes stared calmly back. I was never his brother, Jon whispered. But he was always mine. Weeks passed. And the day finally came, a parley, a meeting at the ruins of Harrenhal where fire once melted stone. 2 dragons stood side by side as Queen Regent Cersei Lannister arrived under guard. Jaime at her side, the mountain behind her, opposite them, Daenerys in black, Arlen in grey, Davos, Tyrion, Melisandre, and dragons lurking above, circling like hungry gods. Cersei smirked. I see your bastard prince survived the North. Daenerys did not blink. I see your coward son wears a stolen crown. Cersei's voice dropped. What do you want? Peace, Arlen said. Cersei scoffed. Peace from dragons. Peace through unity, he replied. End the lies. Let the North rule itself. End the war against Dorne. Step down and let the people choose their ruler. You mean let you rule, she snapped. No, Daenerys said. Let us, the word echoed, us a joint rule, Targaryen blood united. Ice and fire not divided but bound, the crowd murmured. Even Jaime's eyes narrowed, but Cersei smiled. You think a wolf pup and a foreign queen can scare me into surrender? She stepped closer. You want a crown? Then take it with blood. The explosion was fast. Cersei had hidden wildfire beneath the ruins. The trap was always set. Flames roared, the mountain charged, and chaos exploded like thunder. But dragons do not burn, and neither did Arlen. Drogon screamed from the skies, and in the heart of the blaze, Rhaegal landed beside his rider. Arlen climbed on, blade in hand. As the fires of Harrenhal danced behind him, Daenerys rose beside him, her own dragon roaring to the heavens. Cersei fled. Jaime hesitated, and the Lannister army watched in horror as two dragons rose from the ash, not to destroy the world, but to claim it. In the skies over Westeros, the people saw something they hadn't in a century. Two Targaryens riding dragons, side by side. They were not conquerors, they were heirs, and the realm would kneel, by choice or by fire.